Moving on, we come to the Mortans. As you can see from their visual style, the Mortans were inspired by classical imperial Romans, but not only their legions, also the Roman devotion to ancestor worship, which we extrapolated into necromancy, and their scientific tendencies, which we extrapolated into alchemy. So the Mortans have three subfactions: legions, technostratum, and magistratum. Legions, the first one, are based firmly upon Roman legionnaires and armed in a similar manner with pilum, throwing spear, gladius, short sword, as well as good armor and the classical scutum shield. These guys are the tank subfaction of Godslayer, truly tough nut to crack, and especially when they perform their tactic testudo. As heavy infantry, they're rather slow, but rock hard and good, solid, dependable melee troops, although their basic attacks are not that powerful in terms of damage. They can be buffed. And nevertheless, for heavy hitting power, you can also call on their elite brothers in arms, the Praetorian Carnifexers. These chaps are armed with halberds and iron will and have some really good tactics they can use in melee. You've probably heard me mention tactics several times now. Basically, every model and unit in the game has one or more tactics listed on their profile card, which enable them to perform some action which boosts their abilities or enables them to move or knocks down the enemy, etc., etc. There are a great variety of tactics, and these can be used in combination to form synergies. Going back to the legions have a buffer character called the Princeptor, and they're led by the warlord called the Centurion, who is both a decent fighter and a buffer warlord. In general, the Mortan legions function as a tank subfaction, and backed up by some serious firepower from war machines, which you can use from the Technostratum subfaction. So the legions can absorb horrendous charges and damage and then come back with a vengeance. This doesn't mean that they are just limited to boring defensive strategies. With every faction, there are ways to use the models in their typical or classical style, and also more unusual and imaginative strategies. And these will be outlined in detail in articles which are soon to be posted on the Godslayer website. Now, second subfaction for Mortans is the Technostratum, and this subfaction consists primarily of war machines, the Scorpio, which shoots basically large spears at the enemy, and the Cataclysm Catapult, which fires acid, fire bombs, cluster bombs, etc. at the enemy. Mortans have some limited knowledge and use of explosives such as naphtha and other incendiary materials, and in the front lines they have the so-called Zisteri bombers, who are a unit of guys who hurl bombs with their Zisteri gloves. These guys are armored in fireproof leathers and ceramic plates to protect them from acid. And leading the Technostratum subfaction is the warlord called the Libarum Technocrat. This master of mass destruction is a buffer warlord, so he can help the war machines perform more efficiently and also buff the Zisteri bombers. He's also able to give poison to other units, so the Technostratum works exceedingly well when you throw in a unit or two of melee troops from the Legion subfaction. In fact, there are a lot of synergies between the two subfactions, so on their own, the Technostratum is a shooty warband with slow war machines deployed at the rear and light, fast skirmishers at the front. But as I said, you can mix it easily with other subfactions of the Mortans. Rounding out the Mortans is their final subfaction, the Magistratum. Now, this subfaction behaves a little like undead in other games. but they are far more difficult to destroy since they take half damage from normal weapons, which have a normal low power level. And if you don't destroy them in a single round, they automatically benefit from a magical rebinding of their wounds, so they come back to full life points. So you literally have to smash them to bits with heavy weapons, hard and fast, to knock these guys out. The Magistratum subfaction at the moment consists only of the undead models, but in the future there are plans for also magicians of other types. So the Mortan Technostratum is a magic-y subfaction based on stacking buffs. And when used as a Magistratum-only warband, they work wonderfully if you take lots of necromancers to buff the units. They also combine well with units from the Legion subfaction, and the Magistratum come complete with an Imperial Mortifex Necromancer Warlord, and also a monstrous creature called a Moloch, which is an undead construct. So this warband will appeal very much to players who love to add stacking buffs together to create a terrifying threat. And I think their special rules truly portray the undead nature in game terms, and that should appeal to all undead players. So the three Mortan subfactions have a lot of synergies, perhaps more than any of the other factions, mirroring the highly organized nature of their culture.